There's a lot of coaches now that are headed into their third year, and I want us to kind of rewind the clock a little bit right now. Think about that 2021 carousel at the head coaching level. You had Billy Napier to Florida. You had Oklahoma losing their head coach, Oklahoma hiring a new head coach. You had Brian Kelly unexpectedly leaving for LSU. Like, there were so many different big names that left for big jobs that I think we need to sort of circle up right now as a college football community and take inventory of where things stand for these year three coaches. Let's start with the most, I don't know if drama is the right word, the most high intensity hires that I felt like during that cycle was Lincoln Riley leaving Oklahoma for USC, and then Oklahoma goes out and hires Brent Venables. Now, the reason why this has so much juice behind it, one, Lincoln Riley obviously said, hey, I'm not going to be the next head coach at LSU. Post-Bedlam. They lose to Oklahoma State, and there was this vibe of like, hey, was that his last game? Is he going to LSU? And they asked him about it. He says, I'm not going to LSU. Well, he wasn't lying, but he wasn't going to LSU. He was going to USC. And so that, I think, probably rubs some folks in Norman the wrong way. And then also Lincoln Riley leaves Oklahoma for Los Angeles. And again, I don't want to speak too definitively on this because I don't have 100% knowledge of how that fan base feels, but I have to believe that from folks that I've talked to, the feeling was like, hey, man, you left us for Hollywood. You left us for some palm trees, when in reality, Norman is like this blue-collar, physical, bring your hard hat and lunch pail to work every single day kind of mentality from that college town. So those two things, obviously, polar opposites. Now, I don't blame Lincoln Riley for leaving for USC. He did what he thought was best for his family and for, his career long term. So it is what it is. But looking at this whole situation for USC, Lincoln Riley had a great year one, right? Set the college football world on fire. USC is back. They're relevant. Caleb Williams won the Heisman Trophy. Defense is an issue, as it has been for Lincoln Riley. The folks in Norman were saying this when he got to Los Angeles. Like, okay, that's great. It doesn't really fit the way that we do things anyway. However, bad year two. Went 7-5 with the Heisman Trophy winner. And this year, and really the future for USC in the Big Ten, it's going to be all about adapting. Like survival in general is about adaptability, whether it be in the animal kingdom or whether it be in the college football world. So as USC moves into the Big Ten, they're trying to pivot defensively. We had a really great conversation with Lincoln Riley, and the takeaway that I had from that conversation was like, hey, this is a guy that understands what's being said about him as a head coach, what's being said about his football team. Like, he's doing his best to fix it here. They went out and I think hired a really great staff with really high pedigree, with an emphasis on development. How they adapt, again, will essentially translate to how much success they're able to have in that new conference. Now, for Oklahoma, they hired a guy that I would say is an OKG. An OKG is a term you hear a lot thrown around on the recruiting trail. Stands for our kind of guy. Oklahoma hired an our kind of guy in Brent Venables. Intense, loves football, loves the grind. Not that Lincoln Riley didn't, but with Brent Venables and just the overall aura that he has, having been at Oklahoma too for a long period of time as a DC, bringing him back to Norman, if he didn't take this job, the feeling was like, okay, if Brent Venables isn't leaving the Clemson DC job for a place that he has pretty publicly known and loved for a long time in Norman, Oklahoma, when's it going to happen? So this got done, obviously, with him being now in his third year at Oklahoma, 6-7 the first year. And I'll tell you, man, the punchline culture was out in full effect. A lot of folks with takes on Brent Venables and what he wasn't going to be as a head coach. He's not cut out for it. We said, hey, I would caution you to make a definitive statement on Brent Venables. 6-7, yeah, but there was a lot of games that they were in right until the very end. They pop in his second year there, they win 10 ball games. So clearly for Brent Venables, I've been able to take this much away. He can build a roster. There were issues on that roster when he got there. He went to the portal, tinkered with it, made that defense better. He knows how to recruit. 2 top 10 classes in his 2 years he's been there. Now, for year 3, it's going to be about developing because they've got that talent on campus. Can you develop those guys and be able to have sustained success as you enter into the beast that is the SEC? Because I think Oklahoma football overall, if you were to just put it in a vacuum, the arrow is pointing up. Roster talent up, your head coach, his overall experience, he's figuring out how to be a head coach, the arrow is pointing up. However, the schedule and the difficulty level, that's also pointing up. So this is going to be a lot of fun to watch what they are in the future. But that USC and Oklahoma hires, man, I think the jury is still out as to who won that hiring exchange. But Brent Venables and Lincoln Riley, I think, both have a chance to make a statement here in year 3 at their respective jobs. Another couple of big-time jobs with some big-time names, a name that's now even bigger time when it comes to Dan Lanning taking the Oregon job, he had Miami and Oregon. Mario Cristobal, he's at Oregon. When he took the head coaching job there, it was on the wings of the players saying, we want him to be our head coach. The players loved him, obviously, by making this support publicly for him to be the next head coach. They have a lot of success at Oregon. There's one job you'd have to believe that he would leave that success he was having at Oregon for. Just so happened to be where he's from, which is, of course, Miami. So Mario Cristobal leaves for Miami. I think for the most part, nobody really blames Mario Cristobal for making that move. Like, hey, home is home. It's hard to argue with home. Oregon, to their credit, goes out and hires the next rising star, I believe, in the head coaching world, in Dan Lanning, who's the co-DC at Georgia. Fresh off a national title, gets to Eugene, hits the ground running, and I think we could look back here in the next couple of years and see both these guys be very, very big successes. Obviously, a big part of that was going to be year 3 for Mario Cristobal, because 5-7 the first year. Not going to cut it. We all understand that. 7-5, taking any away from being 8-4. It is what it is. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. You saw real success. You saw real year-over-year growth. Not just from a wins and loss perspective, but also from a numbers perspective. They went from, I believe, somewhere in the 80s in total offense to being top 25. Or at least being in the neighborhood of top 25. This is a very big show-me year for Miami. And Mario Cristobal, he's embraced it. He understands what he signed up for with this rebuild of sorts in Coral Gables. Here's the big fascinating thing for me when it comes to Miami in 2024. The hardest part of the lift, if you will, is getting it off the ground. And this is true for college football the same way it is for just lifting anything heavy. If you're deadlifting or you're lifting a couch, the toughest part is when you get under that thing and create some separation between the floor and where you're holding it. And so right now, I believe Mario Cristobal is holding that thing a little bit off the ground. The tough part now is, can you get it up? Can you get it up off the ground, and can you have sustained success to then carry it forward? Because they're doing the right things behind closed doors. If they weren't, you wouldn't see the trend they're having right now. 5-7, 7-5, and what they're doing from a numbers perspective, statistically. So this is going to be a very big year. I promise you he embraces that. He's all about it. It's the way he's built. So Miami, big show-me year for Mario Cristobal in year 3. But Dan Lanning, man, he got his shot, like we talked about, being able to get this head coaching job at Oregon. And to be clear now, this is not a stepping stone job for him. We talked to him about it. He was very clear, like, this is where I want to be. He's put his money where his mouth is, too, by turning down or at least not taking other jobs that became available, whether he was offered them or not. Didn't take the A&M job, didn't take the Bama job. Now, I personally believe that it would be malpractice to at least call Dan Lanning, to at least not call Dan Lanning for one of those jobs, but it is what it is. I think that the hire for Oregon in making him their next head coach intersected perfectly with the trend of modern college football, both for Oregon and at a macro level. Oregon moves into the Big Ten. The Big Ten line of scrimmage conference. You got to be tough. What is Dan Lanning? If nothing else, tough. Tough, and his football team embodies that same persona, both mentally and physically. Oregon had been a Big Ten team for the last couple of years. They just now get to have the sticker on their helmet. I say they were a Big Ten team in the way that they played and the bodies they have up front. The other part of that, too, it's becoming a world now in college football where talent acquisition, the game has changed. You always had to be aggressive. Dan Lanning, being from the Nick Saban, Kirby Smart coaching tree, he understood that better than anybody. But now, in the NIL world, Oregon and the support they have from Nike and Phil Knight, like, they can go out and acquire top talent. So not only do you have a coach who's willing to go national, you have a brand that can and will go national, and you have the resources to then attract that top talent. So all those things combined to, I think, make Dan Lanning in Oregon somewhere where I would buy stock. If I had to buy stock in one of these coaches going forward, I'd be hard-pressed to not buy Dan Lanning stock. Now, Notre Dame and LSU, I think, could be the biggest win-win hires of this whole 2021 cycle when we look back at it. Brian Kelly leaves Notre Dame for LSU. In not so specific language, the sentiment behind him leaving Notre Dame for LSU is like, hey, there's some things that I want to do here at LSU that I can't do or have a tougher time doing at Notre Dame. Academic rigors, geographic location, what else? I mean, the overall deal with not being in a conference. There's a lot of things about Notre Dame that just present some obstacles. Now, he's gone to LSU, to be fair, and he's really done everything that we assumed he could do. Everything that he wanted to do at LSU, short of winning a national championship and an SEC title, he's trended really, really well. 2 years, two top 10 classes, and 2 10-win seasons. Heisman Trophy winner, to his credit. Like Brian Kelly, every positive we thought he might have when he got to Baton Rouge that was talked about has now become a positive. Hey, Brian Kelly, he's not going to recruit. That's why he left Notre Dame. 2 top 10 classes. He's recruiting as well as anybody. They have a number 1 class right now in the 2025 cycle. So Brian Kelly, smashing success at LSU, and I don't anticipate him trending down anytime soon. Now, Marcus Freeman is the really interesting hire here. And it felt interesting at the time because when Notre Dame got the news that Brian Kelly was leaving, it was before their bowl game, and they made it pretty clear, like, hey, we're not slapping the interim tag on anybody. We're not doing this thing where we name an interim head coach. We're just going to kind of sit back here for a second. And everybody was like, no interim tag. What's going on here? Keep in mind now, Notre Dame, this is not just like this lackluster brand where they got to go and try and convince a coach to take the job there in South Bend. They could have swung big. They could have done a national search and been an attractive job for a lot of big-name head coaches. I wholeheartedly believe that. However, they go out and hire their DC, promote him internally, Marcus Freeman, to now be the head coach. And Marcus Freeman, man, he's been tenacious since being named the head coach at Notre Dame. He's attacked it on the recruiting trail. He's got a number 11 and number 10 class to his name at this point. I think that they'll continue to trend upward in that department. He has a chance to make Notre Dame look brilliant. Because everything that he's done since he got there has been under the mantra of challenge everything. Challenge everything. And they have challenged everything. They have gone out and tried to acquire the top talent on the recruiting trail, but also via the portal. Hey, we need a quarterback. Do we trust our depth chart? Do we go out and get somebody? Because they had Tyler Buckner still on the roster when they got Sam Hartman. They could have kept with their quarterback who started week 1 for them against Ohio State going into 2023. Say, nope, challenge everything, go out and get the best or one of the best transfer portal quarterbacks on the market in Sam Hartman, and they have success this year. Go out and land Riley Leonard. So I love the way they've attacked it. Again, I think long-term we could look back at this hire between LSU and Notre Dame and just say, yeah, you know what? That was probably best for everybody. Wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if that was the case. Now, Billy Napier leaving Louisiana to go to Florida was a massive opportunity for him as a head coach, clearly. 6 wins his first year, 5 wins this last year. It's no secret this is a very massive year for Billy Napier at Florida. This is a dig deep year for him. The thing that I don't know gets talked about enough, though, with Billy Napier, and this isn't me trying to carry water for the guy, this is just kind of the fact of the matter, nothing about the situation is fair. And that's not me telling you it should be fair. I'm just making sure we're all on the same page and calling a spade a spade. Nothing about Billy Napier's situation at Florida is fair. Now, college football isn't fair, but look at what he's dealing with. When he took over the job, that roster, it was not ready-made. You had a quarterback who ended up being really successful for you at times. He was inconsistent. I say successful. He was the difference maker for you in some games. Other games, there were some very visible struggles. We'll see what he does in the NFL, but he's a first-round draft pick. Didn't inherit the best roster in the world. The schedule now is absolutely brutal when it comes to modern college football and the new SEC. Like, nothing about this is fair. Now, with that being said, the fact of the matter remains, you got to find a way. Got to find a way. It is like nobody is grading Billy Napier that I'm aware of on the curve of, well, hey, it's a really tough schedule. They probably should. We'll probably grade him on a curve. Florida fans expect success. They expect that brand to be one of the best in college football, and they expect to win on the field. It's not fair, but what I will say is if he finds a way to have success this year, the gasoline that would pour in the Florida brand would be second to none. Recruiting will go through the roof. And I think the number you got to get to really feel extra secure about your job, if you're Billy Napier, 8 wins. That's asking a lot, but last year, I'll tell you what, man, they were 2 plays away from 7 wins. Everyone likes to make jokes about what they didn't accomplish last year. They were 2 plays away from 7 wins, and also their over-under win total last year was 5.5. They won 5. They were about what Vegas projected them to be. So a very, very big dig deep year. We root for Billy Napier on this show, and I'm excited to see what they do in year 3 out there in Gainesville. So very, very impactful carousel was 2021. And there's no way around it. It's shaping modern college football right now. It's going to shape the college football playoff here going forward. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.